Hello, my dear student. Assalamu alaikum. Dr. Rizwan here. Hope you are doing good. Today will be the second part on heart presentation. And today I will discuss about the morphological features of the heart. That means the detailed discussion about the external and the internal features of all the heart chambers. Not only that, I will discuss about the heart valves, interatrial and the interventricular septum. I will give a short idea on the blood supply and the nerve supply of the heart. Also, very important, conducting system of the heart. So today's presentation will be a big presentation. I am requesting you to follow each and every slides very carefully. So let's start. Hello my dear students, welcome back again. So today we will start with the external features of the heart. The heart has an apex and a base. The surfaces are sternocostal surface, diaphragmatic surface, posterior surface or the base of the heart. It has three borders, right border, left border and inferior border, and groups: atrioventricular group, also known as coronary sulcus, anterior interventricular group and posterior interventricular group. Now what are the chambers of the heart? We already know heart has four chambers: right atrium, left atrium, right ventricle and left ventricle. Blood from the whole body returning to the heart enters into the atria and then pumped into the ventricles. From the left ventricle, blood passes into the aorta and enter into the systemic circulation. And from the right ventricle, blood enters into the pulmonary circulation via the pulmonary arteries. This is a representation of the heart with four chambers: right atrium, right ventricle, left atrium and the left ventricle. Now what about the cardiac chambers? The two atrial chambers are divided from each other by a vertical septum that is called the interatrial septum. The two ventricular chambers are divided from each other by a vertical septum that is known as interventricular septum. So atrium and ventricles are separated by the septums. Right atrium lies in front and to the right, and the left atrium lies behind and to the left. The right atrium interacts with the right ventricle via the right atrioventricular orifice that is guarded by three cusps, and this orifice or valve is known as the tricuspid valve. So right atrium is communicating with the right ventricle by the tricuspid valve having three cusps. On the other hand, the left atrium interacts with the left ventricle via the left atrioventricular orifice that is guarded by two cusps, also known as bicuspid valve or mitral valve. The atria are thin-walled as compared to the ventricles and have little contractile power. Actually, atria are receiving blood and they are transmitting it to the ventricles, but the ventricles are the one who are doing the maximum function by their contraction force. So the wall of the ventricles are thicker than the atrium. We will see this picture later on. Now the demarcation of the chambers of the heart. On the surface, the chambers of the heart are demarcated by some lines or groups. They are called sulcus or groups. There are three groups: coronary sulcus or atrioventricular group that we already seen, anterior interventricular group or anterior interventricular sulcus, and the posterior interventricular group. Here we can see that the right atrium from the right ventricle is separated by a groove having some blood vessels. This is actually the coronary sulcus or atrioventricular group. As it is present at the right side, this is the right coronary sulcus. Over here we can see that the left atrium by the left auricle is separated from the left ventricle by another groove. This groove is left coronary sulcus or left atrioventricular groove. Over here we can see that in between the two ventricles there is another groove having same kind of blood vessels, and this is called the anterior interventricular groove, and it is present posteriorly when it is called posterior interventricular groove. Now the coronary sulcus. It encircles the heart and separates the atria from the ventricle. It is deficit anteriorly because of the root of the pulmonary trunk. It has anterior and the posterior part. The right anterior part runs downwards and to the right between the right atrium and the right ventricle. The left anterior part of the atrioventricular groove intervenes between the left auricle and the left ventricle that we have already seen. The posterior part of the atrioventricular groove intervenes between the base and the diaphragmatic surface of the heart, which is not that much clear, but it is mainly seen by a special structure called the coronary sinus. Now the anterior and the posterior interventricular groove, they separate the right and the left ventricles. Obviously, the anterior interventricular groove on the sternocostal surface and the posterior interventricular groove are present in the diaphragmatic surface. The meeting point of the interatrial groove, posterior interventricular groove, and the anterior interventricular grooves are referred as the crus of the heart. Here we can see this is the atrioventricular groove or the coronary sulcus. This one is the anterior interventricular groove. This one is the left-sided posterior interventricular groove. Anterior coronary sulcus, left coronary sulcus. This is the posterior aspect that I wanted to show you. Like this is the posterior interventricular groove, and as you can see, this is the right atrium. So this is the right posterior coronary sulcus or right posterior atrioventricular groove, and this is the left posterior atrioventricular groove, which is mainly having a bigger structure called the coronary sinus that I was saying, and this area where all the groups are united together, this area is called the crus of the heart. This is some picture of the chambers of the heart, as we can see, where we can see the wall of the ventricles are a lot more thicker than the wall of the atriums. At the same time, the left ventricular wall is more thicker than the right ventricular wall, because the left ventricle is pumping the blood to the whole body, that means to the systemic circulation. So due to the increased muscular power, the wall is more thicker. Now let's talk about the atria of the heart. Atria are the receiving chamber of the heart. Each atrium has a protruding auricle. Right and left atrium is separated by the interatrial septum. We have talked about it. Deoxygenated blood from the entire body enters into the right atria through superior and the inferior vena cava, and from the heart itself through the coronary sinus, because heart has its own venous drainage, and that is mainly by the coronary sinus. So from the coronary sinus, blood will enter into the right atrium directly. Oxygenated blood enters into the left atrium from the lungs through the 4 pulmonary veins. Atria pumps blood into the ventricles. Now the ventricles of the heart. The ventricles are the discharging chamber of the heart. Papillary muscles and trabeculae carni muscles are marked in the ventricular wall because they are having some irregular surfaces. The ventricles are separated by the intraventricular septum. In case of right ventricle, it is semilunar shape and receives deoxygenated blood from the right atrium and pumps that blood into the pulmonary trunk, through which it goes into the lung for the oxygenation. We know that. In case of left ventricle, it has a circular shape structure, and it receives oxygenated blood from the left atrium and pumps that blood into the aorta, and through the aorta it will go into the whole body, and that is called the systemic circulation. Now this is the right atrium, we can see over here, which is triangular in shape, and posteriorly it is actually quadrangular in shape. Quadrangular chamber situated behind and to the right of the right ventricle. It forms entire right border. We can see the whole right border is formed by the right atrium. Part of the anterior surface, we can see a little part of the anterior surface that we can see from anterior aspect, and 1/3 of the base of the heart. Posteriorly, this is the base of the heart, and it is mainly formed by the left atrium and 1/3 is formed by the right atrium. It extends from the superior vena cava to the inferior vena cava. We can see superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. Now what is present at the interior of the right atrium? The right atrium is having two special part. One is the sinus venorum, which is the smooth part, and it comes from the right horn of the sinus venosus developmentally. And the other hand, another part is atrium proper, which is the rough part, and it comes from the right half of the primitive atrium developmentally. These two parts are separated by a small muscular ridge known as crista terminalis. We can see this is the interior of the right atrium. Over here we can see some irregularity, that is the rough part, and over here the surface is quite smooth. This is the smooth part, and we will discuss about this part separately. And this two part is separated by a muscular ridge we can see over here, that is called the crista terminalis. Now about the smooth part. In the smooth part we will see the opening of the superior vena cava over here, opening of the inferior vena cava, which is guarded by the eustachian valve. We can see this valve, opening of the coronary sinus over here, which is also guarded by a valve that is called the Thibasian's valve, and some of the opening as the foramina venorum minimum, that is called the vena cordis minimi, that will be present over here at the wall of the right atrium at the smooth part. At the same time, the rough part is including these structures we can see, that is called the crista terminalis over here, some ridges over here, that is called the musculic pectinity or the pectinated muscles, and obviously the auricle. Over here we can see that auricle, which is also having some irregular shape structure within it. So this is the rough part. Now the septal wall of the right atrium. The septal wall inside presents the following features: fossa ovalis, a shallow oval saucer shaped depression in the lower part created by the septum primum. It represents the site of foramina ovale. You know that the foramina ovale was the communication that was present in between the right atrium and the left atrium during the time of development, and when the baby was born, this foramina ovale is totally abolished, and it will remain as a fossa ovalis. And then another structure that is called the annulus ovalis or the limbus fossa ovalis, which is actually the prominent margin of the fossa ovalis itself. The distinct upper and the lateral margin of the fossa ovalis, it is representing the free edge of the septum secundum. To understand this properly, we need to know the development of the interatrial septum, where the septum is mainly coming from the septum primum and the septum secundum. So from the septum primum the fossa ovalis is coming, and from the septum secundum the margin of the fossa ovalis, that is the limbus fossa ovalis, is coming. Then another structure is present at the septal wall, that is called the triangle of Koch, a triangular area bounded in front by the base of the septal leaflet of the tricuspid valve and behind by an anterior margin of the opening of the coronary sinus, and above by the tendon of Tourado, that is called the subendocardial ridge. Actually this triangle is that important because it is having the atrioventricular node or AV node. Tendon of Tourado is actually subendocardial ridge or elevation that extending mostly from the central fibrous body towards the valve of the inferior vena cava. Let's see it. We can see that this saucer shaped area, depressed area, is the fossa ovalis. The margin is quite prominent, which is called the limbus fossa ovalis, and we can see that in front of the fossa ovalis this is a triangular area, a very faint triangular area bounded by the tendon of the Tourado and the tricuspid valve itself. This triangular area is called the trigon of the Koch, and over here actually the AV node is located. We can also see the opening of the coronary sinus over here. So a picture of the interior of the right atrium, opening of the superior vena cava, opening of the inferior vena cava, opening of the coronary sinus, and over here this is the actual picture of the fossa ovalis. Again, from another aspect we can see the rough surface, that is the rough part of the interior of the right atrium. These are the pectinate muscles or the musculi pectinity. And from the superior view we can see that musculic pectinitic crista terminalis, and obviously this is the valve through which the right atrium is communicating with the right ventricle. These are the cusps of the valve, or the tricuspid valve. Over here we can see. Now the right ventricle. The right ventricle receives deoxygenated blood from the right atrium and pumps it through the pulmonary orifice guarded by the pulmonary valve into the pulmonary trunk. We know that. It is triangular in shape and it forms the majority of the anterior border of the heart. Now it is having two main parts again. Inflowing part or the rough part and the outflowing part, or known as infundibulum, or sometimes it is known as conus arteriosus, which is the smooth part. You have to understand that in case of right atrium, the inflowing part was smooth and the outflowing part was rough. But over here it is totally opposite. The inflowing part is rough and the outflowing part is smooth. These two parts are separated by a muscular ridge known as the supraventricular crest or infundobuloventricular crest. So this is the right ventricle. Over here we can see these are the smooth part and this is the rough part, because the smooth part is communicating with vessels always. You can see that these are the valve of the pulmonary trunk, and this is called the infundibulum or the conus arteriosus, and this is the rough part. We will discuss this. The rough part includes so many things. We will discuss this. So interior of the right atrium, the inflowing part or the rough part, what we are having over here. Let's see. The interior of the inflow part of the right ventricle is covered by a series of irregular muscular elevation, and that's why it's called the rough part. Now it is called the trabeculae carni. They give the vertical ventricle a sponge-like appearance. As they are having some irregularity, it will give a sponge-like appearance, and it is of mainly three types. Ridges attached along the entire length of the ventricular wall as fixed elevation. Ridge means just the elevation. Then bridges attached to the ventricle at its two ends but free at the middle. That means it's like a bridge. The two ends will be fixed but the middle will be free, like the bridge. The most important example of this type of bridge is the moderator band or septomarginal trabeculum, which spans between the interventricular septum and the anterior wall of the right ventricle. That means this bridge is the largest one, which is actually present in between the interventricular septum and the anterior wall of the right ventricle. Then papillary muscles or the pillars. Pillars like projections from the ventricular wall. Obviously, as it is a pillar, it is having a apex and the base. They regulate the opening and the closure of the AV valve by their contraction and the relaxation. Over here we can see the pillars, which is having an apex and the base. At the same time, we can see that the pillars are having attached with some fibrous structure that is called the chorda tendineae, and the chorda tendineae is attached with the cusp of the valve. And over here the trabeculae carni, that means ridges and bridges. With some details we can see these are the ridges, that is the elevation, just the elevation, and the bridges we can see that the two end is fixed and centrally they are free, and obviously again the papillary muscles, and these are the cups with the chorda tendineae. Now let's see what is about the papillary muscles. This presents the pillar of the trabeculae carni. As we know, the papillary muscles projects inwards having apex and base. We already know that. Their base are attached to the ventricular wall and their apices are attached to the fibrous called the chorda tendineae. We have seen it already, which are in turn attached to the three cups of the tricuspid valve. As these papillary muscles are from the right ventricle, obviously right ventricle is having tricuspid valve, so the chorda tendineae will be attached with the cusp of the tricuspid valve over there. In case of right ventricle, the papillary muscles are three in numbers: anterior, which is the largest one; posterior or the inferior, the smaller one; and the septal. Now again another structure is a moderator band that we have already named it. It is the thick muscular ridge extending from the ventricular septum to the base of the anterior papillary muscle across the ventricular cavity. It conveys the right branch of the atrioventricular bundle or the bundle of His, a part of the conducting system of the heart. It prevents the over distension of the right ventricle as well. In this picture, we can see these are the papillary muscles, posterior, anterior and the septal papillary muscles having chorda tendineae attached with the cusp, and this thing we can see that from the anterior papillary muscles to the ventricular wall, this is the moderator band. And this moderator band, why it is so important? Because it is containing the bundle of His or the right bundle branch. We will discuss the conducting system on the next presentation. Over here we can see that. Now this is the right ventricle with the papillary muscles, chorda tendineae and the cusp. Again, anterior papillary muscles. And this is the septomarginal trabeculae or the moderator band. Now the outflowing portion of the right ventricle. We know that the outflowing portion is smooth. It is also known as conus arteriosus or infundibulum. Over here we can see it is derived from the embryonic bulbous cortex. The outflow portion leading to the pulmonary trunk is located superior aspect of the ventricle. Obviously we can see it is the superior aspect of the ventricle and it is going into the pulmonary trunk. It is visibly different from the rest of the ventricle with smooth wall and no trabecular kerni. Obviously the otherwise portion of the ventricle is very much rough, as we can see with the pillars and ridges and bridges and cusp and everything, but over here this area seems little bit smooth. So in the dissected heart we can easily find out this portion. Now let's start the left atrium. It is a thin walled quadrangular chamber situated behind and to the left side of the right atrium. The left atrium receives oxygenated blood from the 4 pulmonary veins and pumps it through the left atrioventricular orifice, which is guided by the mitral valve into the left ventricle. Anatomically, the left atrium forms the base of the heart, that is about 2/3 of the heart. We know that the right atrium was forming the 1/3 of the base of the heart, but the maximum participation is coming from the left atrium. Now the left auricle extends from the superior aspect of the chamber overlapping the root of the pulmonary trunk. We will see the picture. Now what is the relation? The left atrium lies behind the ascending aorta and the pulmonary trunk, and the anterior wall is separated from these two structures by the transverse sinus of the pericardium. On the other hand, the left atrium lies in front the descending aorta and the esophagus, and the posterior wall of the left atrium is separated from these two structures by the oblique sinus. Now what is the interior of the left atrium? The interior of the left atrium can be divided again into two parts, inflowing part and the outflowing part. Inflowing part receives blood from the pulmonary veins. Its internal surface is smooth and is derived from the pulmonary veins themselves, because the inflowing portion of the left atrium is developmentally coming from the 4 pulmonary veins, where the outflowing part, which is actually rough, located anteriorly, it includes the left auricle. It is lined by the pectinate muscles that is present within the left auricle, and embryologically it is derived from the embryonic atrium, the left half of the primitive atrium, we can say. What are the openings present at the left atrium? The opening of the 4 pulmonary veins at its posterior wall, 2 on each side, we know that. A number of small opening from the vena cordis minimi, which was also present in the right atrium as well, and the left atrioventricular orifice or the mitral valve. Over here we can see the interior of the left atrium. This is the left atrioventricular orifice or the bicuspid valve or the mitral valve. These are the openings of the pulmonary vein. Again over here we can see the septal wall, opening of the 4 pulmonary veins. Over here the pulmonary veins are opening. This is the mitral valve, and this is the left auricle having the rough part. Most of the part of the left atrium is actually smooth. Now the left ventricle is thick-walled triangular chamber of the heart which interacts with all the left atrium via the left atrioventricular orifice, and with the ascending aorta by the aortic orifice. The wall of the left ventricle are 3 times thicker than that of the right ventricle, as we have seen already. The left ventricle receives oxygenated blood from the left atrium and pumps it through the aortic orifice to the aorta. Left ventricles forms the following structures. Left ventricle is the largest ventricle, so it will form the apex of the heart, a small part of the sternocostal surface, the majority, that means the left 2/3 of the diaphragmatic surface, the majority of the left border of the heart. Interior of the left ventricle. Much like the right ventricle, it can be divided into an inflowing portion and the outflowing portion. The inflowing portion, the wall of the inflowing portion of the left ventricle has the trabeculae carni, just like the right ventricle as described in the right ventricle, and they are mainly having 2 papillary muscles. In case of right ventricle, the papillary muscles was 3 because there was 3 cusp for the tricuspid valve. Over here there is bicuspid valve of the mitral valve, that's why the papillary muscles are 2, anterior and the posterior. And there is no moderator band in the left ventricle. The moderator band was present at the right ventricle, but there is no moderator band in the left ventricle. Whereas the outflowing part of the left ventricle is also known as the aortic vestibule. It is a smooth wall with no trabeculae carni and is derived from the embryonic bulbus cordis. So over here the outflowing part is smooth and the inflowing part is rough with the papillary muscles and trabeculae carni. Over here we can see the interior of the left ventricle. We can see the papillary muscles, the anterior papillary muscle and the posterior papillary muscle. These are the chorda tendineae, and obviously this will be the cusp of the mitral valve. You can see mitral valve, 2 cusp, 2 papillary muscles, and this area is called the aortic vestibule, through which it is communicating with the ascending aorta, and this is the aortic orifice. And we can see the wall of the left ventricle is much more, 3 times thicker than the right ventricle itself. So if you want to see the differences between the right atrium and the right ventricle and the left ventricle, we can see these following things. In case of right ventricle, it receives deoxygenated blood from the right atrium and pumps it to the lung through the pulmonary trunk. In case of left ventricle, it receives oxygenated blood from the left atrium and pumps it to the whole body through aorta. Upper and anterior part is called the infundibulum and conus cordis, conus arteriosus. Here the upper and the anterior part is called the aortic vestibule. The wall of the right ventricle is thinner than that of the left ventricle. Ratio is 1:3. It is 9 mm. On the other hand, the left ventricular wall is thicker than that of right ventricle. The ratio is 3:1. That means 27 mm. It possesses 3 papillary muscles, anterior, posterior and septal. Left ventricle possesses 2 papillary muscles, anterior and the posterior. Right ventricle presents the moderator band. Left ventricle doesn't have any moderator band. Right ventricle cavity is crescentic in shape in cross section. In the left ventricular cavity is actually circular in shape in cross section. Again we can see this is the crescentic shape and this is circular shape. Now the outflowing part is infundibulum, and here the outflowing part is aortic vestibule. In case of right ventricle, the supraventricular crest separates the inflowing and the outflowing part. But in case of left ventricle, there is no such crest. In case of right ventricle, it is exiting through the pulmonary trunk, and in case of left ventricle, it is exiting through the aorta. In case of right ventricle, it forms nearly the whole of the lower border of the heart, but in case of left ventricle, it forms nearly the whole left border of the heart, also the apex of the heart. So again, this is the thickness of the cardiac wall. Left ventricle, right ventricle. This is the left atrium, right atrium, this is the left atrium. So the thickness of the myocardium varies according to the function of the chambers. Atrium is thin wall, derived blood deliver blood to the adjacent ventricle. Actually they are the receiving chamber, so they do not need to pump that much. By the gravitational force, blood will enter into the ventricle, and a small systolic wave is present in the atrial wall. The ventricles are thick walled and stronger. Right ventricle supplies the blood to the lung, and the left ventricle was thickest to provide systemic circulation. Now let's talk about the heart valves. Heart valves ensure unidirectional blood flow through the heart. They are mainly two types: atrioventricular valve and semilunar valves. Atrioventricular valve, obviously they are present in between the atrium and the ventricles. There are two types of atrioventricular valve. On the right side, the right atrioventricular valve, also known as the tricuspid valve, and the left atrioventricular valve, also known as the bicuspid or the mitral valve. Atrioventricular valve prevent backflow of blood from into the atrium from the ventricles when the ventricle is contracting. Chorda tendineae anchor the atrioventricular valve to the papillary muscles. We have already seen it. Now this is the picture where we can see this is the tricuspid valve having 3 cusps, and this is the bicuspid valve with the 2 cusps or the mitral valve. We can also see this is the aortic valve and this is the pulmonary valve. Interestingly, in the aortic and the pulmonary valve there are also 3 cusps. So aortic and the pulmonary valves are tricuspid in nature. And over here we can see how the cusps are actually attached. In every cusp there is a prominent margin which is called the fibrous band, and this fibrous band is having some filamentous structure that is called the chorda tendineae, which is the fibrous filaments. This chorda tendineae is attached with the papillary muscles. So when the papillary muscle contracts, it will do the tractional force about the chorda tendineae and the valve will be open. This fibrous band is called the annulus. Now the semilunar valve are actually the aortic semilunar valve and the pulmonary semilunar valve. We already seen the picture. Aortic semilunar valve lies between the left ventricle and the aorta, and the pulmonary semilunar valve lies between the right ventricle and the pulmonary trunk. Again the picture, and this is the real one where we can see the tricuspid, 1, 2, 3, bicuspid. This one is the aortic and this is the pulmonary. Now a little glance about the circulatory system of the heart. From the whole body, deoxygenated blood will enter into the right atrium. From the right atrium through the tricuspid valve, it will go into the right ventricle. We can see over here, from the whole body, it is coming into the right atrium. From the right atrium through the tricuspid valve, it is going into the right ventricle. From the right ventricle through the pulmonary semilunar valve, it is going into the pulmonary trunk, and from the pulmonary trunk it will go into the lungs for the oxygenation. Within the lungs or respiratory system, the deoxygenated blood will be oxygenated and it will return back to the left atrium by 4 pulmonary veins, and from the left atrium it will go into the left ventricle by the bicuspid valve or the mitral valve, and from the left ventricle it will enter into the ascending aorta or the aortic system by the aortic valve, aortic semilunar valve, and from this aorta it will go into the whole body. So this is the pulmonary circulation over here between heart and the lung, and the systemic circulation from the body to the heart and heart to the body. Now we will start the artery supply of the heart. Before proceeding to the artery supply, we should know something about the coronary sinus or aortic sinus. Aortic sinus are what? We can see the aortic sinus over here. The heart is mainly supplied by the coronary arteries, right coronary artery and the left coronary artery. Both coronary arteries comes from the aortic sinus of valsalva of ascending aorta. In the wall of the ascending aorta, there are some packet-like or pocket-like structures. They are called the aortic sinuses. There are 3 aortic sinus. One is right, left, and the posterior. At the right coronary artery is mainly coming from the right anterior aortic sinus, and the left coronary artery is mainly coming from the left posterior aortic sinus. This is actually present at the left posterior aspect. The posterior one, which is actually non-functioning because they do not have any opening for the coronary arteries. During the time of diastole, these coronary sinuses, these aortic sinuses actually are filled with blood. Now these are the groups again to understand the artery supply. Right atrioventricular groove, interventricular groove. This is again the posterior interventricular groove. This is the posterior atrioventricular groove. Now the right coronary artery. We can see this is the right coronary artery. It comes from the right anterior aortic sinus. We are talking about the course. After its origin, it passes to the right and forward between the infundibulum of the right ventricle and the right auricle. This is the infundibulum of the right ventricle and this is the right auricle. It is moving in between them. It runs downwards and then it along the right atrioventricular groove. Obviously this is the right atrioventricular groove, and this way it will go into the inferior border, and at the inferior border it will wince round and it will go into the diaphragmatic surface. We can see this little bit hazy right coronary artery is going into the diaphragmatic surface, and this right coronary artery will reach up to the crus of the heart. Over here we can see the crus of the heart. It will go into the crus of the heart where it will end, and it will finished or terminate by the anastomosis with the circumflex branch of the left coronary artery. This is the circumflex branch of the left coronary artery, which is having the same course from the left side. Over here the right coronary artery will end as a with the circumflex branch of the left coronary artery. But we can also see that before it ends, it is giving another branch, which is the posterior interventricular branch. So the right coronary artery is ending in the crus of the heart, and before it ends, it is giving another branch that is called the posterior interventricular artery, that is going into the posterior interventricular groove. Now, what are the branches of the right coronary artery? Lot of branches are coming, as we can see. SA nodal branch, because the SA node is mainly supplied by the right coronary artery, about 60% supply is coming from the right coronary artery. Then anterior atrial branch, anterior ventricular branch, right marginal branch is one of the largest branch. We can see this is the right marginal branch. These are the ventricular branches. This is the atrial branches that we can see that is going into the atrium. Then posterior ventricular branch that will go posteriorly, and it is when it's winds round and going to the posterior aspect, the branches that is coming from the right coronary artery as the posterior ventricular branch. It is also giving the posterior interventricular branch that I have shown you before. This is the largest, one of the largest branch, posterior interventricular branch, which is going into the posterior interventricular group, this one. And also posteriorly it is giving to the atrial branches, that is called the posterior atrial branches, and the AV nodal branches, which is about the 80%. That means the AV node is having blood supply mainly from the right coronary artery. Now what are the areas supplied by the right coronary artery? Very importantly, we can see the whole right atrium and some part of the left atrium, which is the actually the anterior part. Right ventricle, except some small strip along the anterior interventricular group, because the anterior interventricular group of the right ventricle is mainly supplied by the anterior interventricular branch of the left coronary artery. So that is excluded. Diaphragmatic surface of the right ventricle, obviously you can see that the diaphragmatic surface, this is the hazy dotted area, this is the right coronary artery which is supplying the diaphragmatic surface. Posterior 1/3 of the interventricular septum. Interventricular septum, which is present in between the two ventricles. The posterior 1/3 is supplied by the right coronary artery, but the anterior 2/3 is supplied by the left coronary artery by the anterior interventricular branch of the left coronary artery. We will discuss that. SA node 60% supply is coming from the right coronary artery. In case of AV node, we already know that 80% blood artery supply is done by the right coronary artery. Most of the contracting system of the heart, except the left branch of the bundle of his. We will talk about the conducting system later on. So most of the conducting system is mainly supplied by the right coronary artery. Now the left coronary artery, we are talking about the course. It originates from the left posterior aortic sinus. This is the left posterior aortic sinus coming, we know that. And after its origin, it moves downwards and to the left behind the infundibulum of the right ventricle. Right ventricle infundibulum, this is the infundibulum of the right ventricle, and the left auricle it is going. And underlying the left auricle, it is dividing into two branches, we can see. One is anterior interventricular artery, another one is the circumflex artery. Actually the circumflex one will follow the same course like the right coronary artery, like it will go to the left border and it will go into the atrioventricular groove and it will reach into the diaphragmatic surfaces, where it will anastomose with the right coronary artery directly at the crus of the heart, as I have told you before. On the other hand, the anterior interventricular branch is going through the anterior interventricular groove and it is crossing the apex of the heart, and it is going into the diaphragmatic surface, where it will meet the posterior interventricular branch of the right coronary artery, which was waiting over here to anastomose with this anterior interventricular branch. So it is having two branches, anterior interventricular branch and the circumflex branch. At the same time we can see the courses. What is the area supplied by the left coronary artery? The posterior part of the left atrium, obviously. Anterior and the lateral wall of the left ventricle. These are the branches which is giving the supply to the left ventricle. Anterior 2/3 of the interventricular septum, obviously by the anterior interventricular branch. Left branch of the bundle of His, which was excluded from there, we already know that. SA and AV node, about 30% cases. But we know that SA node and AV node is mainly supplied by the right coronary artery, not the left coronary artery. Now let's talk about the anterior interventricular branch. It is the main communication of the left coronary artery. It moves downwards along the anterior interventricular groove, I have told you that, and it is going into the apex, where it winds round and go into the diaphragmatic surface, where it is communicating or doing anastomosis with the posterior interventricular branch. The branches that is coming from the anterior interventricular artery is the anterior ventricular branch itself. Then the diagonal artery, we can see the diagonal branch is coming, one of the very big branch of the anterior interventricular artery. Then left conus artery is there, which is these are the left conus artery. Then the septal branches, obviously some of the branches will go into the septum. On the other hand, the circumflex artery, it runs along the left anterior atrioventricular groove, obviously, and at the left border of the heart it winds round and enter into the left posterior atrioventricular groove. That is almost same as the right coronary artery, where it terminates by anastomosis with the right coronary artery itself at the crus of the heart. And the branches that is coming from the circumflex branch is the atrial branches, ventricular branches, SA nodal branch, 40% cases. Left marginal branch, which is just like the right marginal branch of the right coronary artery, we can see the left marginal branch. And also posterior interventricular branch, 10% blood supply is coming from the posterior interventricular branch. Then Kugel's artery is one of the very small arteries there. AV nodal branch, that means it is supplying about 10 to 20% of the AV node. Now what's about the cardiac dominance, one of the very important topic. About 70% cases the posterior interventricular artery is coming from the right coronary artery, as we know that posterior interventricular artery is one of the important branch of the right coronary artery, and this is called the right cardiac dominance. When the posterior interventricular artery is coming from the right coronary artery, it is called the right cardiac dominance. If this branch comes from the left coronary artery, actually it is mainly coming from the circumflex branch of the left coronary artery, which is about 20% cases, it is called the left cardiac dominance. 10% cases this branch is coming both from the right and the left coronary arteries. That means the branch will come by uniting from the branches of the right and left coronary arteries, that is called the balanced cardiac dominance. But most common is the right cardiac dominance, which is about 70% cases. But there is a clinical importance. If the left cardiac dominance happened, and if a block is happening to the left coronary artery, it can affect the entire left ventricle and the interventricular septum, which is more dangerous, because we know that interventricular septum is having blood supply from the right coronary artery and the left coronary artery. So if it is the posterior interventricular branch, which is supposed to come from the right coronary artery, is also coming from the left coronary artery in case of left cardiac dominance. Obviously the whole interventricular septum will be affected if the left coronary artery is blocked. But if it is from the right coronary artery or the right dominance or the balanced dominance, a block of right coronary artery at least spares 2/3 of the septum and the left ventricle. In case of right coronary artery block, it is not that much dangerous because interventricular septum and the ventricles, left ventricles, are mainly supplied by the left coronary artery. So we can understand from this information the left coronary artery block is more dangerous than the right coronary arterial block. Now these are the peculiarities of the coronary arteries, very commonly asked question in the Viva. They are functional end arteries. They are the biggest vasa vasorum. Coronary arteries gets blood only during diastole. Coronary arteries having two receptors, where other blood vessels are having only one receptor, that is the alpha receptor, but in case of coronary artery they are having both alpha and beta receptors, alpha receptor for the contraction and the beta receptor for the relaxation or dilatation. Coronary arteries are having high capillary networks and their oxygen extraction is highest. They are susceptible for degeneration and the atherosclerosis. That means, you know, the atherosclerosis, that deposition of fat and calcium within the lumen of the coronary arteries, which is causing the myocardial infarction, which is very dangerous. And also coronary arteries are having anastomosis in 3 different levels: subpericardial level, that means very much superficial, at the myocardium, and even in the subendocardial level. So subepicardial means the epicardium, it just below the epicardium, then in the myocardium, and even in the subendocardial level. So anastomosis is very much profound in the coronary arteries. These are the peculiarities of the coronary arteries. Now in this picture we can see the anastomosis in between the right coronary artery and the circumflex branch of the left coronary artery, one of the major anastomosis, and also in between the anterior interventricular branch of the left coronary artery and the posterior interventricular branch of the right coronary artery. And we can see that they are anastomosing with capillaries, so there is no direct anastomosis. These are the anastomosis. They are the potential anastomosis, I should say. Again I am saying these are the potential anastomosis, when the anastomosis is happening through the capillaries. Now let's talk about the venous drainage of the heart. Heart is mainly drained by the coronary sinus and its tributaries. Coronary sinus is located in the posterior part of the atrioventricular groove. It empties into the right atrium between the infravena cava and the tricuspid valve. The tributaries of the coronary sinuses are great cardiac vein, medial cardiac vein, small cardiac vein, posterior cardiac vein, oblique vein of the left atrium. Heart is also having venous drainage from of the other veins, which are not the tributaries of the coronary sinus, but they are emptying directly into the right atrium. They are vena cordis minimi, anterior cardiac vein, and the right marginal vein. Let's know something more about these cardiac veins. Now the great cardiac vein begins near the apex of the heart, accompanied by the anterior interventricular artery and more proximally circumflex artery, and then it will enter into the left end of the coronary sinus. We'll see pictures all of this thing, so no worries. Then medial cardiac vein accompanies the posterior interventricular artery and opens at the termination of the coronary sinus. Small cardiac vein accompanies the right marginal artery, runs in the atrioventricular groove to end into the right end of the coronary sinus. Sometimes small cardiac vein can open directly into the right atrium. Then oblique vein of the left atrium of Marshall, it runs in the posterior surface of the left atrium and drain into the left end of the coronary sinus. Posterior vein of the left ventricle, it runs on the diaphragmatic surface of the left ventricle and ends in the middle of the coronary sinus. Then right marginal vein, which accompanies the right marginal artery and drains into the small cardiac vein and directly into the right atrium. Then anterocardinal cardiac veins, they are 3 to 4 in numbers, and they drain from the infundibulum of the right ventricle and opens into the right atrium through its anterior wall. And lastly, vena cordis minimi or Thibasian's vein. They are numerous in number, and these veins open into the posterior wall of the right atrium. So this is the in total venous drainage of the heart. Let's see some picture. We can see that the great cardiac vein is present in the anterior and the posterior interventricular groove, and obviously they will accompanying the anterior and the posterior interventricular artery, and it is going and following the circumflex artery like that, and it is going into the coronary sinus at the left side. This is the posterior vein of the left ventricle going into the coronary sinus. This is the middle cardiac vein, and this is the small cardiac vein having the branches of the right marginal vein. In this picture we can see that right marginal vein is entering into the small cardiac vein and going into the coronary sinus. This is the great cardiac vein. This is the anterior interventricular vein. Again, this is the posterior cardiac vein, middle cardiac vein, small cardiac vein, and obviously this is the posterior aspect, so great cardiac vein is hazy over here, we can see over here. So this is the diagram of the venous drainage of the heart. Now the conducting system of the heart. Heart is having sinoatrial node or AV node, AC node, which generates the impulse about 75 beats per minute. Then from the AC node to AV node there will be 3 pathways that will generate the impulse from the AC node to AV node, that is called the internodal pathway. And at the AV node it delays the impulse about 1 second, 0.1 second I should say. That impulse passes from the atria to the ventricle via the atrioventricular bundle, AV bundle, that is called the bundle of His. AV bundle is split into 2 pathways, right and left bundle branches in the interventricular septum. These bundle branches carry impulse towards the apex of the heart. Then the Purkinje fibers that carry the impulse to the apex of the heart and to the ventricular wall. In this picture we can see this is the AV node, this is the internodal pathway, this is the SA node, this is the internodal pathway, this is the AV node, and this is the bundle of His. Then it will divide into the right bundle branch and the left bundle branch. The right bundle branch is going as a Purkinje fiber to the right ventricular wall, and the left bundle branch is going to the left ventricular wall as a Purkinje fiber. Now the innervation of the heart or the nerve supply of the heart. Heart is obviously having autonomic innervation. The sympathetic supply is coming by the thoracic 2 to thoracic 5 segment of the spinal cord. Obviously it is cardio-excitatory. The parasympathetic one, the heart is inhibited by the parasympathetic innervation. A pairs of vagus nerve is supplying the parasympathetic supply. It is cardio-inhibitory. So that's all about today's presentation. On the next presentation we will talk about the cardiac skeletons and the applied anatomy of the heart. Till then, take care.